So you're having issues getting into your Windows installation, or your PC just straight up has problems booting up, or some weird stability problems. This video might be for you, because in this one I will explain you what the BIOS exactly is and how you can resolve some of the issues you may encounter. So first of all, the BIOS is related to the firmware on your motherboard. It is kind of a subsystem that runs all of your hardware, and you can configure many things in there. For instance, your CPU, your memory, how your drives are gonna be connected, what interface they're using, and so on. So there are multiple settings you can choose and change and do. And sometimes some of them, or one of them, usually it is one of them, just gets wrong or just doesn't really work properly anymore with the hardware you have in your system. Actually one of the main issues that I encounter is just the battery on the motherboard ran out. It is a CR2032, and the thing is, every time, I mean, you may be able to fix your issues, but every time you disconnect your PC from the power supply, it will actually lose all of the settings within the BIOS, because the battery, when it's empty, it doesn't allow the BIOS to store the settings anymore. So if that happens, you will have to replace the BIOS battery, which is, as I said, just CR2032. Is a battery that you usually found in watches, and yeah, they're easy to find, easy, and also very affordable. So getting into the BIOS requires you, on most motherboards, to press the delete button, which is this one. Sometimes it says del, very often this deletes. However, if you have a OEM system, it is very recommended to Google and search for instance, del BIOS key, so you know what key you need to press, because some BIOSes, they require the F2 key or the escape key. They're all different, so just so you know, that's how you enter the BIOS. And it's very important when you press the power button on your system that you really repeatedly press this key. Otherwise you're probably not going to get into the BIOS, and you just need to redo the process again. So first of all, when you encounter this screen here where it says please enter setup to recover BIOS settings, it very much indicates that your battery is empty. That your settings just reset themselves, and that's the reason for why it won't boot properly anymore, because some of the settings are just not correct anymore. So I go into the BIOS by pressing the F1 as it says on the screen, and then I will have this screen in front of me. So in my case, I'm using an ASUS motherboard. You may have some different variants of ASUS motherboard, or you have another brand, but basically they are built very similarly. So with ASUS, you will first of all get to this screen, which is the easy mode, where you have many of the main I don't want to call them settings, we just see some main information about your system, and yeah, but actually not much more. So if you want to go to the real settings, you need to press the F7 key, which allows you to go into the advanced mode. You will also find that on different boards where it will allow you to enter a different mode if you are not already there by getting into the BIOS. So this is the advanced mode, and so the first setting you will need to check is when you go to advanced, you navigate by using the arrow keys on your keyboard, and you go to storage configuration. in this setting right here, you will find the controller mode of your SATA connection, which can be, in this instance it isn't here, but on older motherboards you will have the option to choose IDE, and IDE is an older standard, and whenever the system loses its settings, it will restore default to IDE. And when you have Windows installed using AHCI, it actually won't boot properly anymore. And that's very often the root cause of the issue. So you want to make sure you have AHCI selected in the SATA mode selection. So this is already here. I don't have SATA drives in my system, so that's actually an easy one. Then the next setting will be within the boot section of your board, and first of all you want to make sure that you have your SSD as the main boot drive, because sometimes it depends on how the PC builder connected the drives to the motherboard. It could be that the hard drive is actually connected on the first selection of the SATA connector, and so your system, when it has the default settings restored, will try to boot off your hard drive, but there is no Windows installation. So you will have to go to a sub menu which is called hard drive BBS priorities, sometimes just hard disk priorities and so on, and you go in here and you want to make sure that your boot option number 1 is your SSD. I only have one drive, but it is actually very easy to figure out which one is the SSD. In most cases, it is the drive with the lower number. So it will, for instance, say Samsung 256 and some cryptic number afterwards. And hard drives usually have a bigger number, for instance 500 or 2000, depending on the storage capacity of the drive. So first selection should be your SSD. You get out of this menu again by pressing escape, and you will be back here. Then you need to make sure that boot option number 1 is the Windows Boot Manager. Just make sure that's the first setting. Boot option number 2, your SSD, and number 3, it doesn't matter, it could be everything. But first of all, Windows Boot Manager, and then your SSD. And usually that's about it. And when you're there, you just go to exit, save changes, and reset, and your system will be fine and boot up again. But make sure you replace the battery, because it will lose the settings whenever you turn down your system and disconnect it from the wall. Just so you're aware of that. Now, I will go to AI Tweaker, because in here you will probably be able to fix issues that are related to bad configurations, your system not being able to perform at certain frequencies anymore, and it will get unstable and such. So we're here. First of all, usually, and it is very legitimate that you will get a system where XMP is enabled. And XMP is the memory profile of your system RAM, and will load faster settings than, as you saw here on auto, you will actually only get target DRAM frequency of 2133 MHz, even though your memory will be able to run at faster speeds. So you have XMP here. And sometimes, in some instances, your CPU or your RAM has issues to run at these speeds. So you can actually go here to DRAM frequency and select manually a lower frequency. So if you could go down to 2133 and try it out again, and just to see whether that was the issue. So you could actually figure out whether it is memory, because when your system crashes and it says something like memory management, it is very often your RAM. So when you have the memory management issue on your blue screen, is probably your system RAM, and you can go into the BIOS and select the lower speed for your memory. Alright. Then sometimes, depending on what system you bought, your builder may have changed the CPU core ratio. So for instance, he may have overclocked your system a little bit. Let's say you're here and it is at 42. That means your builder overclocked your system a little bit, and maybe it just isn't stable anymore at these settings. And you will be able to, I don't know, identify the issues by the blue screen that says clock watchdog timeout and yeah, other blue screens basically. Yeah. So you can go in here and just go like 2 steps down and then see whether it actually resolves the issues that you were encountering. So you will go to the right side, save changes and reset and test it out. Alright, so actually I want to check something. Yes, makes sense, because my CPU isn't overclockable. Okie dokie. Then the rest of it actually doesn't matter, it isn't important for your stability. One other thing that you may want to do is fan speed control, because when your system loses all the settings, maybe some fans are going like full blast and it just really isn't a pleasure to use your PC anymore. So you need to, on some boards it is in the monitor setting, where you have the DQ fan configuration, where you can change the fan speed of your cooler, which sometimes when it is at disable, it means it will go full blast also on the case fans. So I go to silent, because and everything else silent, and that's about it. So, in my opinion, usually when you are not able to resolve the issues by doing all these steps that I just showed you, you probably have bad memory, like actually really bad memory that you cannot resolve by lowering the speeds of it, or just something else is wrong. Maybe the power supply has some weird voltages that cause system instabilities, which is very possible. I've had that on some PCs, or just your Windows installation is broken, which actually happens sometimes, and I've encountered that too. But these are basically the steps to make sure that your main components of the system are running fine. When you tested out all of these things, probably the issue is somewhere else. Just so you know that. So I'm gonna go to exit and save changes. Yes, and that's it. Maybe it helped to some of you, and I will see you in another video. Until then, bye.